All right, so my name is Stephanie Davis. I'm with Fifth Square. We are a political action committee, and our focus is on policy surrounding the built environment. That includes housing as well as transit and any street infrastructure and public spaces in general. So today we are here with Morgan Cephas, the representative from the 192nd District, which covers West Philadelphia, like right on the edge, right on the county line. It includes St. Joe's University and goes a little bit further west than that. So like real West Philly, as she put it at our last meeting. So Fifth Square did endorse Morgan. We were incredibly impressed at a meeting we had earlier this year. And she did answer our questionnaire, which I will post in the links. And let her introduce herself.
So thank you so much for the great introduction and just knowing the difference between my West Philly versus West Philly that people are more familiar with. So it's not the University City, it's not the UPenn, it's, as you stated, it's close to St. Joe's University. And I represent areas, Winfield, Overbrook Park, Overbrook Farms, Green Hill Farms, Haddington, and Carroll Park. I am in my second term, so I've been serving for a little bit over 3 years. We are naturally in a re-election, so I am, naturally running for my third term. We are a district that is a tale of two cities, similar to, communities across Philadelphia. We're a microcosm of having parts that are more affluent than others, but also having a poverty rate that exceeds our city's poverty rate. So on the southern end of the district, we roughly have around 40% of a poverty rate, and which is significant. We also have a series of transit nodes that are critical to connecting to outside of Philadelphia, to healthcare resources, to grocery stores, to basically live a quality of life. We have a significant transit system. And, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to go after the Fifth Square endorsement, and really excited to have this group of policy thinkers have me as one of their candidates, because this part of the district my part of Philadelphia really needs to be a part of this conversation. We have a significant number of highways that run through the district, and we've had a significant number of fatalities. We also have significant infrastructure investments that's happening throughout the district, or whether that be the trolley running along Lansdowne Avenue, or whether that be City Avenue, again, where we've had a significant number of fatalities. And, it's just important to be a part of this conversation and to ensure that this part of West Philadelphia, which is essentially a gateway for some communities, to be a part of the discussion and to help drive policy that, just creates a safe space for commuters to come and go.
Thank you. The other thing that I do want to note while we're getting started here is that I have linked for people to apply for a mail-in ballot. This is the last day. If you do it online by 5 o'clock, you will be able to still vote by mail in the election, which is on June 2nd. So I'll continue to post links. I'll also post a link for people to be able to find their polling place. Polling places have been scaled down significantly to keep people safe, and it is likely to be different from your original polling place. So be sure to check the maps on that. So with that, we're going to jump right into questions. And our first question is, how has Philadelphia been doing in this moment of crisis? And what have you been working on recently to help individuals affected by this situation?
So one thing that I'm constantly reminded of is when Philadelphians' backs are up against a wall, we really come out swinging. And I feel like that's where the city is right now. We are in a crisis. We also recognize that we have a significant poverty rate. And I think, one of the things that I constantly try to remind people is that a lot of the fights that we're having right now, a lot of the systems that we're putting in place, these are conversations that we've been having prior to COVID-19 for a while. Again, we've been hovering around a 25-26% poverty rate for some time. So the challenges of getting resources to low income residents, or the digital divide conversation is not new. Having breakdowns in our healthcare system isn't a new conversation, especially with the recent closure of Hahnemann, creating yet another healthcare disparity zone in the city of Philadelphia. Having food insecurities. I mean, these conversations just aren't new, in that we've been fighting against these challenges for some time. And it doesn't help to have, an administration that didn't take this situation serious, which is unfortunate, because I feel like that took a lot of time away from cities and states like ours to better prepare. But I mean, again, we are dealt the hand that we were dealt. And I feel like we've been doing a good job. Yes, of course, there's so many things that we could be doing better throughout the next couple of months, during COVID-19, post COVID-19. We're going to be asking, what could we have done differently? How are we preparing potentially for a second wave? How are our systems, in place now? Again, what changes could we make? What best practices exist? How are we doing as a region? I mean, there's a significant number of questions that we're going to be asking post this situation. But I mean, I think right now, with our city and our state being able to get as much PPE and testing in the hands of those that need it has been critical. I mean, setting up, I don't even know the number right now. I know we're over 40 food distribution sites. Again, setting up the different testing sites. The School District of Philadelphia did an amazing job with the digital divide concern. Yes, we still have issues with infrastructure, but the fact is, when you look at our county versus some other counties, we literally were able to raise close to 11 million overnight in order to support our students. And one of the things I constantly like to say is that we're simultaneously building a plane while we're flying it. And, because we've had to come up with our own guidance, because we've had to develop our own playbook as a reaction to this, because again, of the failed leadership coming out of Washington, D.C., I really think that we've, put ourselves in a position to where, I mean, people, again, are still being impacted, but we've just put ourselves in a position to where we're able to react to any and all of the challenges that have been coming up during this crisis. And, I want to say the state also has been doing a yeoman's job as well. Again, there's so many kinks that need to be worked out in some of our systems. So, for example, some of the things that I've focused on, I am a member of the Labor and Industry Committee, and I've recognized the unemployment compensation situation has just been dire for so many people. But, one of the things I try to communicate is that this time last year, we were at close to 100,000 people applying for unemployment compensation. Now we're a little bit over 2 million. And when you just think of the pressure to that system, I mean, we have been able to get that department the resources that they needed in order to scale up. But again, there still are some challenges. So that's one of the things I've been working on. Additionally, with the digital divide piece, myself, along with Chairman Whip Harris, as well as Pete Schweier from another county, we introduced legislation to create a grant fund to help fund school districts, like Philadelphia, like other counties, because again, so many other counties just don't have the foundations that we have where it would allow people to scale up so quickly. So providing that resource has been a top priority. Additionally, protecting our frontline workers. I mean, as you've seen, with Fifth Square being, having a focus on our SEPTA system, when you think of our transit workers as they're going to work, their ability to access hazardous pay or paid sick leave, so they're not using their sick time, or accessing PPE, or just accessing testing for workers to ensure that they know that they're safe. So, I mean, that's been a good bulk of our work, is just really trying to protect a lot of our frontline workers because they come from so many of the communities that we represent. So needless to say, we're working on a couple of things.
Yep,
Not to mention we're going through a budget season that we're trying to work through. We also have to spend COVID-19 money by the end of December, uh, preparing for a second wave, flattening the curve, a partridge in a pear tree. Yes.
So it's a slow day at the State House is what you're saying.
Just a little bit. We're only working from 9 to 9. And, you know, rightfully so. I mean, this is a job that we fought for. This is a job that we signed up for. And, you know, this is a job that we are able to do. And, you know, one of the, again, our just main priorities to ensure that communities aren't left behind. I mean, one of the challenges, and, you know, I talked about this at, you know, the meeting that you held, is that when certain systems shut down, that communities rely on, like the 192nd, it's important that we fight for them. Again, it's always a reminder when there's a big snowstorm and buses can't get in and out of this part of West Philadelphia because we kind of sit on a hill. It literally locks out an entire set of communities from being able to access Center City. I mean, I think of when I was growing up, I went to Central High School, where you're getting on public transit in order to connect. My mother, she worked literally at the MSB building. She was an auditor for the city. And again, when there were those big snowstorms, that our entire section of that city, of that entire section of that of Philadelphia, in that West Philadelphia, were literally shut out, to where there were mobile vans coming to pick people up. So it's just a constant reminder, especially during these times right now, when there's a breakdown in systems that, you know, we've been fighting to repair and to sustain. You really see it, you know, come to light during these type of times.
Absolutely. So let's get to the next question. So if you do get reelected into the State House for your fourth term, which committees will be your priority to get onto or to stay on for this
So
term?
I'll first talk about the stay on. So right now I'm on the Appropriations Committee in Labor and Industry. And, you know, one of the reasons why those two committees are a top priority of mine, again, is because the city of Philadelphia, you know, represents a lot of working people that are in unions. And, you know, it remains critical that, you know, we protect our union workers, we protect our families, our working families. And, you know, it's critical that we protect things like the unemployment compensation system. And as the only African-American that actually sits on that committee, I really feel like, you know, the voice that I provide and my perspective is key when having these conversations. Additionally, when it comes to appropriations, I mean, that's where the money is. And in order to really advocate for financially for our city and for things like SEPTA, you know, we're getting ready to go into this big financial cliff. Between small businesses, between communities, again, that need investment. This is the committee where you're able to have those conversations, and the committee where you have the opportunity to talk to every department during budget season about how are they prioritizing Southeastern PA. As you know, we are the economic driver of the state. So if we have systems that are failing, that essentially, you know, shines some light into how Pennsylvania is going to fare. And, you know, which is a priority when we have these conversations. If this part is not working, Pennsylvania potentially can't work. And, you know, again, during just this crisis, when we're talking about COVID-19 funding and where they're going to prioritize their spending, you're able to have conversations about small businesses not being able to access the federal government resources. I'm sure you've heard a lot of that conversation in various news outlets, where you have a small mom and pop shop that's competing against a Ruth Chris or a Shake Shack when it comes to financial support, because maybe they might have better relationships with banks, or maybe the bank don't want to necessarily, they're in to make money also. So why not go with the bigger box stores, or, you know, those that have the financial means to pay higher commissions? So, you know, naturally they would, not naturally, but that's essentially what they've been doing is, you know, cherry picking who they want to give financial tools to. It almost has become a Hunger Games situation. And, you know, and on the Appropriations Committee, you have the ability to articulate that and highlight where there's gaps. And, you know, just using this as an example, how so many stores and so many, again, mom and pop shops were just boxed out of this process. And if you think about it again, the southeastern region, we're going to be in the yellow for well, we're in the red now, but when it comes to, you know, June 4th, June 5th, we're going to be in the yellow for some time because our numbers really haven't flattened out. And it's almost, how are you going to prioritize communities that have been impacted by COVID-19 the most? And again, this is where you're able to have that conversation. So now I don't think I need to go on about why appropriations is important. So between appropriations, labor, and industry, I think I'll be able to get one more committee. You know, I'm a firm believer to have less makes it quality over quantity. So I think the other three that I would prioritize would either be transportation, health, or insurance. Transportation, naturally, because of, you know, where I'm situated, again, in Pennsylvania. And we're going into critical conversations, and, you know, representation from Philadelphia needs to be a part of that conversation in that budget hearing, bringing up the impact transportation funding has on, again, the economic engine of the Commonwealth and its importance. I think when it comes to health and insurance, I am the vice chair of the Democratic Health Caucus, and I've prioritized maternal health over the past couple of years. And, you know, because of that, I have an interest in ensuring that insurance companies are, you know, covering basic needs for mothers as they're going through being pregnant and giving birth and during the postpartum period. You know, that's been a big issue in the news around maternal mortality. So that is essentially why health and insurance is a big one for me. But those are the three. But those are definitely the two that I do want to stay on.
Great.
But I think everybody wants to get on transportation too. It's one of those hot committees. Yeah, it's roughly around like 5 committees that are top priorities for people, and insurance and transportation and approps, they're definitely in the top 5.
I feel like if I had to pick, I'd say appropriations is pretty much takes the cake anyway. So pretty important for all of the things that you mentioned. So
yes, and even when we fingers crossed get back that Democratic majority, it's going to be even more important then. Then we won't have any septum issues.
That and so with the transportation committee, that kind of brings us to our next question, which is about SEPTA. So with them, with the dire financial situation facing SEPTA, from plummeting ridership due to COVID and lack of fare collection on buses and trolleys, like they only just started collecting fares again, and the future prospect of losing that $178 million from the turnpike toll revenue, what are your solutions for ensuring that SEPTA will survive this crisis? And also a secondary part of this is, would congestion pricing and transportation network company surcharges be on the table? And just for listeners, TNC or transportation network companies, when you think about those, you think about Lyft and Uber, like rideshare companies.
So I think a couple of things. I think out of every crisis, there's an opportunity. And with this crisis, this is again, a lot of these conversations, we've been having a lot of these conversations prior to COVID-19. We've been talking, and I don't have to go through the laundry list of things that I talked about at the top of the discussion, but transportation and financial sustainability for our SEPTA infrastructure has been a constant conversation we've been having prior to COVID-19. So this isn't new. But what this will do is force us to look at all things and bring all things to the table when we consider how do we fund it. But it also has to be, in my opinion, it has to be a multiple funding stream. They have to be reliable, but also we have to get innovative. So when, your team first started talking about a congestion tax, I feel like between you and the council president was when I first started hearing about it. I was like, okay, yes, they did just come from New York. So, immediately, again, representing Black and Brown communities in 192nd, and having a significant, poverty rate on the southern end, but also having a lot of transit nodes in my district, I realized the congestion tax, originally made me a little nervous because it just made me think of, yet another regressive tax added to the poor and low income communities. But then when I began reviewing different proposals and seeing the TNC conversation come up, I thought, okay, this makes sense when we look at different populations that could potentially, be required to pay this tax. So, yes to the TNC companies, but just making sure that any surcharge is not pushed off onto the rider is something that's going to be critical for me. Additionally, looking at other groups, of course, commercial trucks that are making deliveries. Additionally, commuters that are coming from outside of Philadelphia. So I really think looking at that congestion tax is definitely going to be something that will be on the table. I also think something that could be interesting is an infrastructure bank to support our local transit infrastructure. I know there was a bill introduced up in Harrisburg by a Republican to consider this. And to also allow PennDOT to make loans for two cities that open and operate an infrastructure bank. I think, again, a lot of these things are going to be critical to be on the table as we think about funding. I also think there are things that we're not taxing that could help support or be. I think you know what I'm talking about. We have some industries that aren't being taxed. We have some corporations that got some pretty big loopholes and going into Delaware. Not that I'm all for marijuana at this point, but there are, again, some significant conversations we're going to have, and we're going to have to get innovative. And I think that is where, in my opinion, my Republican counterparts just get it wrong, is that, in order to balance a budget, in order to save things, they assume that you should just cut everything. Sometimes I don't understand why they don't understand the importance of mass transit. Again, being in the section of Pennsylvania that is the driver of our economy. And they don't necessarily come up with recommendations on new funding streams. So, when we're talking about having one of the lowest PITs in the country, that again could be an avenue. Again, Marcellus Shell, the fact that we're not taxing that industry, is something that should be considered. When we're, again, I don't really know where I am right now on it, marijuana. But, when we start thinking of these things, we have to ensure that we are shoring up systems that generate significant revenue for the Commonwealth. And, just to put it plain, connect people to work, whether that be inside of Philadelphia or outside of Philadelphia. And again, that generates money for the economy. I also would like to know, SEPTA has received a financial package from the federal government. I'd also like to see where those dollars are going. How are they going to a reserve? What they're being spent on? How are they, using those dollars to, maintain our infrastructure? But then also it's just a conversation for the city of Philadelphia. How are we beginning to use this crisis as an opportunity to begin having these conversations? And I know we've been kicking the can. For some reason, that's what we like to do, is keep kicking the can down the road until we're slapped with our backs up against the wall. And it's like, okay, we need to start having this conversation now. And I think what this crisis has done has, further pushed our timelines, where we really have to start thinking, and not just, through talking points or, through press conferences, having conversations on what we need to do, and actually get to work and start doing them, or our systems will fall from beneath us.
Absolutely. All right. So we're going to keep it on SEPTA. Today, actually, they're holding their fair hearings. And Fifth Square has proposed a fair plan for SEPTA that we believe is attainable, responsible, and would benefit low-income riders. It includes ending the transfer penalty, fare capping, free rides for children, and including Zone 1 regional rail fare, like with a trans pass. And we just wanted to get your perspective. Do you support our fair plan? And we just wondered if you had any long-term goals regarding that fare structure.
Yeah, I mean, I think I absolutely support the FAIR plan. I mean, I think, so one of the things that, I often do is when I'm going in the center city, I'm on public transit, just because, you just want to see what your residents are experiencing on a day-to-day basis. And, just to see how much the fares have increased is pretty troublesome, given, again, that we have a city that has a 25% poverty rate. And I do think it's a bit regressive because it doesn't take that into consideration. And I think, yes, definitely some riders are able to afford that, but some just aren't. And I think there should be some thought taken into consideration about that. I mean, when I was coming up, we were paying for public transit to go to school. And I don't understand why that still is something that we're doing. And again, when we have 37% of our children living below the poverty line, it creates yet another barrier for them to access their education. And I think, again, during this crisis, it's going to force us all to take a look at how we've been regularly doing things. When you've had, the significant number of people that you've had on unemployment, before COVID-19, during COVID-19, people working 2 jobs, children trying to get to school, walking instead of riding because they can't afford it, or just not going to school at all. It's something that we really need to consider. And again, having a tiered approach and not just a one size fits all is going to be critical as we move forward. I do have the Overbrook train station in my district. And, so I understand the challenges when it comes to the fares and, again, being able to connect to work. I mean, I just don't believe that residents should be spending a significant portion of their salaries on getting to and from work. So I do think, again, all things have to be on the table as we move forward.
Great. Yeah. I actually commute right to the edge of your
Yes,
district.
you told me.
Yeah.
You told me.
So I know it can be challenging to get to and from that part of the city. And
yes,
it just shouldn't be.
It depends on the time of day. It can take you up to an hour, or it can literally take you about 15 minutes. And I think we need to have more of a predictable system. And again, the cost when it comes to having the poverty, and some people can afford it, but some people can't. And I do think that we should be taking a tiered approach when it comes to those that might not be able to afford it. And again, having had paid, SEPTA while trying to just get to and from school is just something that we really need to, reverse our thinking on. There's enough barriers that exist in the city of Philadelphia for our young people as they travel to and from school. This should not be an added barrier.
Absolutely. And it just helps to raise a crop of kids that will become adults who then take SEPTA and make it easier and make a more reliable system too.
Yeah, I agree.
So our next question is more of a public space question, and also a housing issue. many people are saying that the pandemic and its calls for social distancing are just going to change the face of how we congregate in cities.
Mm-hmm.
And some are using this moment to rally against density and the construction of urban housing. Do you believe there is a path forward in terms of encouraging more housing construction and keeping the cityscape an important part of our landscape?
Yes, of course. I mean, I think as we again go through this COVID-19 challenge, I think we need to have a path forward when it comes to housing construction, but making sure that we have affordable housing. Again, when we talk about 26% of a poverty rate, 25%, with 37% of our children being under the poverty line, it's important that we have that as a priority. And I've, looked at some of the work that Councilwoman Jamie Gautier and some of her colleagues have done to ensure that we're prioritizing housing as we move forward. And looking at some of those proposals, we've used that in some of our discussions up in Harrisburg on how to financially support that. And someone that's really leading that charge is Rep. Elizabeth Fiedler from Philadelphia, and Rep. Sarah Anamorado. Yes, I know, big fans. So they've been really leading that charge and really leading that conversation. And, I definitely support those efforts. During my time as a legislator, I've realized how important it is that when we're talking about housing construction, we're doing it in a way that is done in an equitable fashion. And definitely ensuring that we do affordable housing around transit nodes so we can encourage transit-oriented development. So during my time as an elected, I got an opportunity to work with 4th District Councilperson Curtis Jones Jr. and State Senator Benson Hughes to build a significant number of units for affordable housing. So, and one recent piece that we did was a $60 million project that's roughly around 60th and Market. Now, that is a big transit node for me. And it's significant to have housing adjacent to public transit. So again, it makes commuting to work easier and more accessible. And again, coming from an equitable lens. So when it comes to, COVID-19 funding that we want to ensure that we're putting dollars, one, into our housing trust fund, making sure that we make dollars available for renters to ensure that they're not going to be financially impacted by this crisis, as well as people that have mortgages, whether they are owner occupied or not occupied by the owner and they're just, renting to tenants. We want to make sure that everyone has the financial foundation to not just get us through COVID-19, but come out on the other end, not in, significant debt. But I do think we have to prioritize, again, housing construction, but making sure that it's low income and affordable housing, both for families and for seniors, but also making sure that it's done in an equitable way. Because being out in West Philadelphia, this part of West Philadelphia, we don't see a lot of construction. We don't see a lot of new housing coming up in our area. But when it does, we want to make sure that we're not pricing people out of Philadelphia. So yes, we do have to make this a priority, but we have to do it in a way that is equitable.
Yep, it's got to work for everyone. And I'm sure your district also sees some of that missing middle that faces, like you said, you don't want people coming out of this in debt.
Yeah.
Even if, they have that credit line, you want to make sure they're all housed as they age in place as well.
Yeah. I mean, again, these are conversations we've been having prior to COVID-19, and this just exacerbates the issue because of the pressure on our systems. So, I mean, it's going to be critical as we move forward. I think, one thing that can't be missed in this conversation is Philadelphia's environmental hazards challenges. When we talk about lead and asbestos, now we're adding COVID-19. It just, we have our work cut out for us. And again, these are not new challenges. This just adds an additional challenge. And I think as a member of different caucuses in Harrisburg, that's where our voice becomes important. So, when we're having a conversation with the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers about lead and asbestos in schools, that we are now adding the additional conversation of COVID-19 as a part of that discussion, and just reminding reminding everybody that's making the decisions that these are some challenges Philadelphia has been facing for a while. So we need to use this opportunity to, leverage as much as possible to address as many issues that we can.
Absolutely. Okay, so the last formal question that we have is kind of going back to the congestion pricing and TNC use. So as we emerge from this pandemic, people will rightfully be wary of crowding back onto trains and buses. And we want to ensure that that doesn't result in an enormous increase in car and TNC use. Like you said, highways run through your district. There's probably already like a significant amount of congestion that makes that schedule so hard to predict for public transit. So what do you think city or state agencies like PennDOT should do to keep people moving on our streets if we're expecting a ridership drop on transit?
That's a really great question. Me personally, I don't understand why you'd be okay with getting in a stranger's car versus getting on a bus. But, neither here nor there. I think this is a great opportunity. Funding wise, we need to get to these systems as much money as possible to deal with remediation and, making sure that our buses are, maintaining the social distancing. But I do know that it's going to be potentially a challenge, because that naturally means a decrease in ridership if you're, maintaining the social distancing. But maybe that means we need to, purchase more buses to accommodate more people that are going to be wanting to ride. But I think it's going to really take a messaging campaign. Of course, resources again to ensure that like all of our entire system, again, not that we didn't have these challenges before, but our entire system just needs to be clean. So this is a great opportunity to get direct dollars that have to be spent before December. Pennsylvania is getting close to $4 billion. We're getting $4 billion to spend before December 31st, specifically on COVID-19 related issues. And this is a great opportunity the last time I've been in our subways, it could use a cleaning. So I think this is a great opportunity to target those dollars to do that remediation and to, wipe down as much of our infrastructure as possible. And I'm talking a daily, multiple, as soon as you do the loop, you're cleaning it completely. And that when people get onto this infrastructure, they have a completely different experience than what we were used to. And, it is sad that we can say that we were used to some of our transit nodes, in the condition that they were. I'll just say that. So I think, again, this is a great opportunity to financially invest in that. But then I think also maintaining that social distancing after COVID-19. So people, again, will still feel protected and still feel that they have the space to ride a system that is focused on their safety and their health, but also maintaining the PPE that's been offered on the bus, making sure, the horrible part is that SEPTA had to go through that challenge with the gentleman being thrown off the bus very violently, to realize that, you should probably just have masks readily available for people that might need them. I want to say Councilwoman Jamie Gauthier brought that up in a recent article or city council conversation. And, so I do think there's a significant number of strategies that we can employ to win back our consumers. And I think it's going to be, as we move out of this, or even as we move through this, it's going to be important to restore consumer confidence. And ways to do that is a great messaging campaign, just reinsuring the safety and the health of our system and the reliability. I mean, again, sometimes the challenges with the TNC system is, we don't really have that much oversight and regulation when it comes to the quality of the vehicle, or, God forbid, if they're coming from out of Pennsylvania, are we even inspecting them? Do we have enough inspectors to inspect them? Which is a later conversation for when we reauthorize TNCs. Trust me, we'll be having I'm sure the organization is going to have an entire press conference and policy hearing about the changes that we need to make. So I'll put a pin in that. But I really think it's going to, again, come down to our messaging, ensuring the safety and the health of the system and the reliability. I think that works in our favor. I think second, again, to ensure that we're going after as much COVID-19 funding. I know the Philadelphia delegation plan, the Black Caucus, and the Senate Democratic Caucus has put environmental remediation in all of its plans, and that includes things from our school buildings to nursing facilities, but also to our public transit system. So making sure that we go aggressively after dollars to keep our systems, remediated, healthy, clean, and all those things. And again, then I think the third thing is ensuring that we are providing free PPE that is on the actual buses so people feel safe, and maintaining those social distancing requirements. I think, there's a good plan that we can put in place. So many people have relied on this infrastructure before, and these have been some of the challenges that we needed to really have a conversation about. And I think it's time to have that conversation, and we really need to strategize, to your point, how do we build back up consumer confidence in this system? Because that's the only way that we're going to be able to, well, that's partially the way that we'll be able to sustain it, is that if people come back to the system.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. That does wrap up the formal questions. I don't see any submissions in the Zoom chat. This is on Facebook Live, so there will be comments in there, I'm sure. I do want to just do another plug for mail-in ballots, because today is the last day to apply by 5 p.m. You can do it online. If you don't have a PA driver's license or an up-to-date state ID, you do have to submit a paper form, but there is a drop box at City Hall. If you are able to get to City Hall and you can drop it in there before 5 o'clock, you still have a shot at getting that mail-in ballot to be able to vote, because we want everybody who possibly can to vote for you, Morgan.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I literally asked my campaign manager, Ashley Session, who's doing an amazing job. I don't think she knew that she was signing up for a campaign during the pandemic, but it definitely is a resume builder. But I'm asking her every day, so where's the district at on mail-in ballots? Now, I want to say we're a little bit over 5,000. I mean, which is not that significant. How much is it, Ashley?
Over 6,000 now.
Thank you. So we're literally over 6,000. We're watching those numbers every day. And, we're just fielding calls throughout the rest of the week about, walking people through the process and getting them as much information. We've even dropped off applications to our area civic associations. You're able to drop them off at your senator's office before 1 o'clock. So I think you got about 15 minutes. But yeah, I mean, I think we're going to do the best that we can. And I think roughly 6% is a little bit over 10% of my actual voting district. And, again, we're going to do the best that we can, get out as much information as possible. We're still trying to figure out the zone situation. But, again, I'll close it out how I began it, that we are flying a plane and building it at the same time. But we're going to get to our destination.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Morgan. This has been great. Really appreciate it. All right. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, everybody. Stay safe out there. And thanks for joining us. It's important that we're all informed voters as we work through this. So thank you.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye.